Scholomance Academy is here, and it's time to review the Warlock cards. I think Warlock got a lot of strong cards. They're definitely one of the big winners for the expansion, and there's a lot of ones I'd love to talk about, so let's just jump in. Starting off, we have Demonic Studies. This is a 1-mana spell that lets you discover a demon, and your next demon costs 1 less. I think this card just doesn't give you a lot for the mana. I think there are a lot of bad demons, and for that reason, I'm going to give it a 1-star. I don't think you run this, but you're happy to discover it randomly. Moving along, we have Raise Dead. This is a 0-mana spell. Deal 3 damage to your hero, and return 2 friendly minions that died this game into your hand. So it's basically a 0-mana draw 2 and draw 2 cards that you're running. It's not random. So I think this card is quite good. I think you would run it in Zoo. I think you'd run it in a control deck. I think it is just a very solid card. And for that reason, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 in terms of both meta relevance and card quality. It's just really good. Moving along, we have the 7-mana 5/5 Sociologist Militia. I think this card is very good as well. For each soul fragment in your deck, you get a 3/3 soul with Rush. I think you want to run the soul fragment cards already. They're quite solid, and this is a great payoff, and I can see this in a bunch of different Warlock decks, and for that reason I'm going to give it a 4 across the board as well. I think it's very strong. Moving along, we have Soul Shear. This is a 2-mana spell that deals 3 damage to a minion and shuffle 2 soul fragments into the deck. I think this is, again, enables a lot of great cards. It's pretty strong on its own, and for that reason it's a 4 across the board as well. A lot of the soul fragment cards are quite good. Next up, we have School Spirits. This is a 3-mana spell that deals 2 damage to all minions and shuffles 2 soul fragments into your deck. This is basically Volcanic Potion, or the Breath of the Infinite, I think it's called in Priest, which people run. It's a good control card, and this is a great control card with upside as well. So I think this is an easy 4 out of 5 as well. I think Warlock decks will run this. Not Zoo and aggro stuff, but control for sure. Maybe it's Quest, maybe it's something entirely new. It'll be good. Moving along, we have Shadowlight Scholar. This is a 3-mana 3/4 that will destroy a soul fragment in your deck to deal 3 damage. This card I'm a bit more on the fence about. I think the benefit is pretty good, but I don't think a 3-mana 3/4 is kind of enough. Yes, there's upside, but is the upside amazing? Maybe not really. So I think I'm going to give this card a 3 out of 5 in card quality, and maybe a 3 out of 5 in terms of meta relevance, as I still think it might be good enough just with the rest of the soul fragment package, but I'm not in love with this one. I think it's a lot weaker than the rest. However, that is not the case for the 5-mana 4/5 Void Drinker, which has Taunt, Battlecry, destroy a soul fragment in your deck to gain +3/+3, which would make this a 7/8 Taunt, which is an Earth Elemental without the Overload. I think this is a huge payoff. I think it's an excellent card, and I think many decks would run this. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 in terms of overall card quality and a 4 out of 5 in terms of meta relevance. Again, very solid soul fragment card. Once again, speaking of solid cards, we have Spirit Jailer. This is a 1-mana 1/3 demon that will shuffle 2 soul fragments into your deck. Again, really solid effect, really solid stat line. I think lots of decks are going to run this. Maybe it's Zoo, maybe it's Quest Warlock. Who knows? And for that reason, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 across the board. Just a very good card. Now, it is worth mentioning that with all these soul fragment cards, some people might say, well, you wouldn't run them in Quest Warlock because if you discount them to 0, then you don't really get any benefit. They already cost 0. However, I think that is offset by the fact that by having them in your deck, you draw more quickly because it shuffles a card into your deck that casts while drawn and draws another one. So it speeds up that process, which makes it kind of worth it to run it anyway because it speeds up your quests. And yes, you might draw a couple cards that cost 0 that already cost 0, but you get the ability to draw and tap for 0 way earlier. So I think it does end up being good. So that's my argument for why I could see this in a ton of decks and all of the cards, just so we're clear. Next up, we have Archwitch Willow. This is a 9-mana 7/7 summon a random demon from your deck and hand. I think this card is just not good enough. I think there's a ton of other Warlock cards you'd want to choose from, and I don't think we have that many good demons. For that reason, this is a 1 across the board. Next up, we have Philosophy. This is a 1-mana spell that lets you copy the lowest demon in your hand, and Outcast, give them both +1/+1. I don't think this is that great in Demon Hunter, and I don't think it's that great in Warlock. I just think you could run better cards, and even if it hits something half decent, you know, there's better options. So I'm going to give it a 1 across the board. Moving along, we have Flesh Giant. This is an 8-mana 8/8 that costs 1 less every time your hero's health changes on your turn. This means if you life tap, you'll take 2 damage, and this will go down by 1. If you draw a soul fragment, this will go down by 1. Sooner or later, it's going to cost very little, and that's very good. I think it reminds me a lot of Mountain Giant, which is no longer in Standard, and playing Mountain Giant on 4 was sometimes enough to just win the game. So I think this card is very likely going to be a 4 to 5 across the board. I think it is going to be played early. I think you could play it in a control list. I think you could play it in an aggro list. It's just a very solid card and synergizes with a lot of what Warlock is getting. So really good stuff from Warlock. Next up, we have Disciplinarian Gandling. After you play a minion, destroy it and summon a 4/4 instead. I could kind of see this in Zoo. I think maybe if you had some Death Rattle stuff, this could work pretty well. It's hard to say. It doesn't really synergize that well with Scrap Imp, as Scrap Imp buffs them, and then if you destroy them immediately, you're losing the buff. So there's anti-synergy there. It's tricky to say what kind of package Zoo will go for, but I'm not sure how this fits in. That being said, I think it is still a 3 out of 5 in terms of card quality, but I think you won't play this, and I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 in terms of overall meta rating. Next up, we have Boneweb Egg. This is a 2-mana 0/2 with Death Rattle, summon 2 2/1 spiders. It also has the ability that if you discard this card, trigger its Death Rattle. I think this is just a very solid card. Eggs are generally quite good. This is in some ways better than the egg that gives you a 3/4 afterwards, as you get 2 bodies. 2 2/1s is pretty good. I think this is just a good card, and then the little added bonus of the discard thing is still relevant. There are quite a few ways that we discard cards, and while you're not necessarily going to target it, you're not going to feel bad if you Soulfire and get this on top of it. So I think it's just a pretty solid card, and you give it 3 out of 5 across the board. Very good. Last but not least, we have the 4-mana 3/3 Brittlebone Destroyer. This is if your hero's health changed on this turn, you can destroy any minion. I think this is very reminiscent of Vilespine Slayer, like I said before, and I think it is quite good in a control Warlock like Quest Warlock or something similar, and it has great Soul Fragment synergy, and I think it's just a very solid card. So 4 out of 5 across the board. I think you're going to be seeing this a lot. Okay, and that's it for the Warlock cards. All we have left is Warrior. If you've enjoyed these reviews so far, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys next time.